Welcome back to the channel. I'm Crypto Trend Trader and this is Bitcoin TA in a minute. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so trade at your own risk. Alright, today we're going to be looking at Bitcoin on the 4-hour chart. And I had done a longer in-depth video about Wyckoff Accumulation and kind of given some examples and how it could play out in Bitcoin. But I just wanted to do one that's only a few minutes long that give people a better idea as to targets and what we can expect if this is in fact accumulation and we do break to the upside. Basically what you have is you have like the lead in and buying climax, which is your essentially high of the accumulation we've been going through, and then we fall down and we get an automatic rally off of the bottom, which we form our first support off that low. We're going to bounce back up, get our second test. The second test is essentially going to try to break back through and continue the uptrend. When that fails, we immediately spike back down and we retest the lows, often put in a lower low, which in this case we did. Typically you're going to find you'll come down to the peak before the climax, but in this case we basically just made it to a smaller peak here, which that's perfectly fine as well. So then we basically have put in like this descending triangle, and then all of a sudden we break out of it, giving people the impression that we're moving to the upside. But then again, the rally fails, we get a lower high, come back down. But now you'll see we start putting in a series of higher lows as well. And as we start doing that off the peak, what's essentially happening is we're forming what Wyckoff refers to as the creek, and it's a series of typically it's lower highs and lower lows, but in this case it's essentially a symmetrical triangle. But it is possible that what will happen next is we'll break out of the smaller triangle here through the resistance, find support on top of it, which we did break up above it with a massive wick yesterday, but then we found no support. We broke immediately back down into it. So it's possible we do actually break out of it and then come up, test the top of the triangle range, break through it, and come back and retest that line as support that was resistance. So once we retest that line and then we start moving upward, essentially on that retest is when you want to take your trade. So I put over here just essentially a trade setup for it. What we would do is we would take a buy off the retest at about 10.5, 7.5. You want to ladder in here in case it doesn't come all the way down, it gets front run. So you want to basically just buy in this area on the retest, or as it retests and starts moving up is actually the best buy. But as you start moving up here, we're going to essentially try to come back up to first this high. Once we break that one, we'll probably get an immediate big move up. But essentially what we're looking to do is, it's called jumping over the creek, which is putting in a new high over top of the high that started the creek, the downtrend inside of it. And once we do that, we're looking for basically a test of the top of the trend, the resistance on top here, a retest after we break through that resistance and find support, and then essentially same thing, break all the way to the top again, and then off we go. Now what can happen here is you'll break through the high and then all of a sudden you'll get a massive sell-off, and that will be the spring. If that happens, if you break through the high, come back to retest and fail and start shooting back down, that's typically a fake out, and it was in fact a distribution pattern going on the entire time. But assuming that doesn't happen and this is in fact accumulation, this is actually a really good trade setup, because what happens is you break through here, and as soon as you start coming back down, you ladder in this area, you place your buys right here, you place your stop loss just below the bottom of the triangle pattern. So if we break through here and then we come back down through the triangle, don't find support, that's fine. You get stopped out or you close your trade. Either one is perfectly fine. But the important thing is that you have it to where the pattern is invalidated, the breakout is invalidated before you actually get stopped out. So then whatever happens from there, man, I'm sorry about that, guys. So whatever happens from there, essentially you're going to play with it. But if you had a 4% risk right here you were putting up, the reward potential, if we even just come to the top of the pattern, the reward is 31%. So it's 4% to find out if you're right, it's 31% if you are. So that's risk-reward ratio of 7.7. So I mean, that's a massive risk-reward. That's a great scenario. Even if you took some of your profits along the way or just put in a trailing stop, that's a great trade. And there's probably going to be an equally good trade setup to the downside. We'll talk about that in another video. But assuming this is in fact Wyckoff accumulation, this at least gives you some targets. Even if the trend ends up failing and we don't make a higher high and come back down, or if we do and come back down, you'll have already locked in 31% profits. Even if you start laddering in, you take a small position off this and ladder in as you go, and then ladder out as you reach your targets. That's also a great trade setup as well. But you're not going to see too many setups like this that are this cut and dry, and that's one of the great things about when one of these patterns does come to completion. But again, it's not financial advice. I'm not necessarily biased to the upside or biased to the downside. I'm just trying to present the situation so that you as a market participant will know what to do. You're not immediately trying to figure out what to do and scrambling to figure out why the price is going up, how high it's going to go, etc., etc. So, alright guys, that's Wyckoff Accumulation on Bitcoin. Few minute long video. I just want to go a little more into detail. I know people like it when they stay a little shorter, but they're also very informational, and I know people like specific targets as well. So you're looking to basically buy once we break out on the retest of 10.560 area, 10.550 area, and you're looking to take profits up here at the 13,886 or 14,000 area. And if you're wrong on the trade and you lose 4% of what you put into it, if you take your stop loss here at 10,150. So, and I mean, you could argue that you could take a trade from here and essentially just place stop loss accordingly. If it does end up breaking to the downside, you get stopped out. Or I know a lot of people will enter a short and a long, and then whichever way it breaks, the incorrect position will get stopped out and the correct position will just run. And in a situation like this where there's huge upside or downside potential and we're looking for a huge breakout of a large pattern, that's not necessarily a bad idea. So, but we'll get into that. We'll do one of these on distribution, and then we'll get into video maybe on playing the trend in both directions. So whatever happens before the breakout, you can be in a position, and then you're not scrambling to take positions. And if you are wrong in one direction, it makes up the stop loss of the incorrect trade with the positive trade, and then obviously you let it run and see massive gains. So, well, there you have it, guys. That's Bitcoin TA in a minute with Crypto Trend Trader. That's our Wyckoff accumulation on Bitcoin and how it could play out here in the near future with some specific price targets. If you did enjoy this video, you got anything out of it, please leave us a like, subscribe. Give us a comment down in the comments if there's something in particular you'd like to see, or if you did enjoy this video. It really does help grow the channel, and we're just getting started. So thank you very much. Appreciate you checking out the content. I am Crypto Trend Trader, signing off.